So what we'll do tonight is that I'll start by asking the first question to both of them, and then they will ask each other questions for about 20 minutes. And then I'll open it up to all of you to have a chance to ask each of them questions as well. Okay. So the first question to kick us off is to ask each of you to talk about how you became activists working to end sex trafficking. Who wants to start? You can ask, either one of you.
Well, I'll start because then it'll be chronological,
okay,
because I'm older. I understood sex trafficking as being historical. I thought it was something that was in the past. And I read about, Matilda Jocelyn Gage, who was the third member of the suffragist triumvirate with Susan B. Anthony and Stanton. She wrote a lot about sex trafficking and about how young women were kidnapped or tricked or, the same methods as today, and taken to lumber camps and mining camps and held prisoner there. I read about, Freud's Anna O, who was his first patient, and whose real name was Bertha Pappenheim. She actually was a great activist. There's a stamp for her in Austria, a great activist against sex trafficking. And people used to ask her why she didn't get Freud to help her, and she said, I wouldn't let him anywhere near. Because, of course, she knew the truth about Freud, right? I mean, she invented analysis as the talking cure. Well, that's another story. Okay. Anyway. But I think it wasn't until I discovered what was then, and I think maybe still called, the Minnesota Pipeline, which is within this country, of course, which is, not even international, but young farm girls who kind of went to Minneapolis or St. Paul for excitement and then were fell in love with or were promised jobs as waitresses or dancers or something, but anyway, so many of them ended up chained by the ankle to beds in Times Square, or dead, or always drug addicted and so on. That the cops here, the NYPD, came to call it the Minnesota Pipeline. I think that was my first awareness, but the degree to which it is present in every country, and the customers generally come either from the rich countries to the poor ones, or from the better off areas of that country within the same country, and the degree to which it is, risen to the profitability level that challenges drugs and challenges arms, is something I think we are all still learning. I sat in Las Vegas interviewing, just before this last presidential election, interviewing women in Las Vegas. The average age of entry into prostitution in this country is 14. It's worse where you can see literally there, it's worse where it's legal than where it's not, So, every day new revelations come, I think, and every time I talk to Ruchira, for instance, the Commonwealth Games, and the preparation of, it's like colonialism all over again, bringing young women, girls, to be prostituted during those games and giving them drugs so that they will develop breasts, develop sexually earlier to be more marketable. Every day I think we discover something more, and every day we discover that it's possible to come back from this, it's possible to combat this, and I'm so proud to be here with Ruchira, who's, this is a really rare person here who is effective on the ground and at the highest levels, and everywhere in between. It's very rare to be able to do that.
I was a journalist, and I was actually researching another story in Nepal, walking through the villages of Nepal, when I came across rows of women
I came across rows of villages which didn't have any girls or women. And I began to ask the people in the villages that where were the girls, where were the women. And some of the men would just look away, and some would look sheepish, and some would smile and giggle. But some men did answer the question, and they said, don't you know, they all are in Bombay. And I was really puzzled that how could girls in these remote areas of Nepal, in these remote villages which didn't even have access to a road, how could all these girls and women be in Bombay? So I began to look as a journalist, and the answer was horrifying. I found, just as Gloria spoke about the Minnesota pipeline, I found there was a pipeline from these villages in Nepal to the brothels of Bombay and the brothels of Calcutta and Delhi and other parts of India. There was the local village procurer who would go to parents and say that he would get a daughter a job in the city or a daughter married off. And he would collect together 5 or 6 girls, pay the parents something less sometimes than $20, collect them together, take them to the nearest city like Kathmandu, and hand them over to an agent or a middleman who would then take them to the border of Nepal and India, where they would pay off these corrupt border guards and take them across the border, where there were these lodge keepers. These lodge keepers would then lock up these girls, beat them black and blue till they were completely subjugated, their spirits broken. And then they were handed over to another center of transporters who would put them in buses and trains and take them all the way to the brothels of Bombay and Calcutta, where there were these pimps who would negotiate the price of the girls, who were no more than 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And the price was negotiated on the basis of how fair they were, how voluptuous they were, whether they were virgins or not. And then these girls were bought, literally bought like cattle, for $50, $100, and locked up in these rooms in the brothels, which were 4 feet by 6 feet sometimes, and with iron bars on the window, no ventilation. And these girls were kept in these rooms for 5 years and raped repeatedly, brought out for customers 8 or 10 times a night. And all the money was kept by the brothel managers, the brothel owners, and then the unorganized criminal networks who were running this whole trade. So I found that there was a whole system which was running the prostitution trade. And it was exactly like slavery in the 19th century, because it was well run, well oiled, and there was a constant supply. And then I found, to my horror, that there were these men who would define what they wanted, and the pimps would actually find these petty criminals to supply the girls on demand. So they would tell them that this is the kind of girl we want, or that we want more girls during a festival. And so the pipeline was run based on the demand, and it was a demand-driven industry. So I thought it cannot be, and I wanted to do something about it, and I started badgering everyone I knew that, can you get me a commission to make a documentary on the subject? And Canadian Broadcasting Corporation agreed. I field produced the documentary, and it took me 18 months to make the documentary, because I went into the brothels, I went into the villages, I spoke to the girls and the women. I didn't want to use any power structures to access the people who were the most victimized. I really wanted to understand the whole situation from their point of view. How did it happen? So it took much longer, but also it was a life-changing experience for me, because once I made eye contact with the women, I found that I couldn't walk away. As a journalist, I'd covered war and famine and hunger and ethnic conflict, but I had never seen this kind of deliberate exploitation of one human being by another. And I was outraged. So this documentary got made. I won an Emmy for outstanding investigative journalism for it, but I didn't want to do journalism anymore. I felt it wasn't enough, and I wanted to push and push and push to change the whole situation. So with the 22 women who helped me make the documentary, we decided to start Apne. And those 22 women actually, organized while we were making the documentary. They became a group, they were protecting me. At one point, when we were making the documentary, someone pulled out a knife on me and said, I won't let you film here. And he was either a customer or a John or a pimp. I don't even remember who he was. But the women surrounded me and protected me. So I wasn't protecting the women were protecting me, and that's how the documentary got made. So at the end of the whole documentary, when the women said that, can you help us, we want to change our lives, I said, no, you can help yourself. And they said, what do you mean we can help ourselves? We don't know how to read, we don't know how to write, we don't know how to do anything, look at our situation. And I said, do you remember you helped me? You formed a circle around me. So we can form a circle just like this. And I, as someone who can read and write, can facilitate and help, but you have the strength within you. And that's why we chose also the name Apne. Apne means self-help. And so the women decided to help each other and rescue each other from this situation, and we formed the group of 22. And now, over the years, I'm struggling and trying and winning and losing and all of it and carrying on. And I've formed bigger and bigger circles of such women. And one such circle is here today. And you heard Pamela and Sharda and Leela and Tamar and Gloria. And these circles are just going on increasing, and it is beautiful and wonderful, because these circles are going to change the world. Just as the women protected me, and then we went on to protect them, we are actually now reaching out to more than 10,000 women in India. And there is Taina from Equality Now who is reaching out to women in Iceland and in South Africa and in other countries, forming circles there. So these self-help groups just continue and have a life of their own, and they prove that change can happen. And that's what my journey has been. And that's how I started as a small activist, and I still feel I'm part of this whole chain of activists around the world, and all of us are bringing about change. So that's how the activism happened.